Emily Hart had exactly $11 in her bank account, and a smile she gave away for free. She worked the closing shift at Rosie's Diner, a chipped little place on the edge of Maple Hollow, where the coffee was weak but the regulars were loyal. Her apron was patched at the pocket. Her shoes had a hole in the left sole that let in the rain. But every night, before she locked up, she did the same thing. She wrapped whatever was left over, a cold burger, a half a pie, a paper cup of soup, and left it by the back door for whoever needed it more than the trash can did. "You're going to bankrupt this place with your charity," snapped Vanessa, her cousin and the diner's assistant manager, watching Emily box up a meatloaf plate no one had touched. "It's already paid for, Vanessa. It's just going to waste. It's going to my profit margin." Vanessa smoothed her expensive blazer, a gift, she liked to remind everyone, from a very generous friend. She had transferred into managing the family diner 2 years ago, after Emily's mother passed, and left her half the business to each of them. Vanessa ran the books, Emily ran the floor, and somewhere in between, Vanessa had convinced herself she ran Emily too. "Some of us weren't born with someone to catch us," Emily said quietly, and went back to the leftovers. That night, the wind came in sharp off the hills, carrying the first real cold of the season. Emily was locking the back door when she saw him. A man slumped against the dumpster, coat torn at the shoulder, hands raw, breath shaking out in white clouds. Not drunk, not dangerous, just cold and tired and completely invisible to a town that had walked past him all day. "Sir? Sir, you can't sleep out here. It's 15 degrees. He didn't answer, just looked at her the way a man looks when he's stopped expecting kindness to be real. Emily didn't call the police. She didn't take a photo for social media, the way half of Maple Hollow had done to him earlier that day outside the bank, laughing as security dragged him off the steps for vagrancy. She simply held the door open. "Come in. It's warm. I've got soup." He hesitated, like the offer itself was a trick he was waiting to see the catch of. "There's no catch," she said, reading his face. "It's just dinner." He sat at the counter. She served him the meatloaf plate, a bowl of the good soup, not the leftover kind, and coffee hot, with 2 sugars, because that's how her father used to take it. He ate slowly, like a man relearning how. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. "You didn't have to do that. Nobody has to be kind. That's what makes it worth something." He looked at her for a long moment, memorizing something in her face she didn't know was being tested. "My name's Nathaniel," he said finally. "Emily." She refilled his coffee. "You need a coat before you head back out. I've got my dad's old one in the back. It won't fit great, but it's warm." She never asked why a grown man was sleeping behind a diner. She never asked what he'd done or hadn't done to end up there. She just fed him and gave him a coat and told him the door was unlocked if he needed to come back. She had no idea that 6 hours earlier, that same man had walked out of Cross Tower, his own company, in torn clothes, on purpose, to see who in this town would still treat a stranger like a human being. She had just become the only one who passed. He came back the next night, and the night after that. Always at closing, always sitting at the same stool, always in that same battered coat. Though Emily noticed his boots had somehow gotten better, sturdier, newer, within a week. She didn't comment on it. People had pride, even people with nothing, and she wasn't about to poke at his. "You're here early tonight," she said, sliding him coffee before he asked. "I like the company." Nathaniel's eyes crinkled at the corners when he almost smiled, which was more often now than it had been that first frozen night. You always work this late? Someone has to close. Vanessa likes to leave before the dinner rush ends. Emily didn't say it bitterly. She just said it like weather. Vanessa's your boss? My cousin. Co-owner, technically. My mom left me half the diner when she passed, but Vanessa handles the money side. I handle... Emily gestured at the empty tables, the dim lights, the half-mopped floor. This side. Nathaniel filed that away the way he filed away everything Emily said. Carefully, like a man building a case. Though for what, she couldn't have guessed. What she didn't know. Nathaniel Cross was the founder of Cross Industries, a logistics empire worth $11 billion, and 3 weeks earlier he had announced, quietly, to his board, that he intended to give away half his fortune to rebuild towns just like Maple Hollow, struggling old mill towns the world had left behind. He'd come to scout the town first, incognito. No security, no driver, no name. What he found broke something in him. The mayor's office had turned him away at the door when he arrived in worn clothes, asking about local shelters. The bank had called security on him for loitering. A well-dressed woman outside the pharmacy, he'd later learn her name was Vanessa Hart, had literally stepped over him on the sidewalk and told her friend, loud enough for him to hear, "This town's getting so trashy." Every single person who mattered in Maple Hollow had shown him exactly who they were, except the waitress at the diner on the corner. "Can I ask you something?" he said one night as she was untying her apron. "Sure." "Why do you do it?" "The food, the coat, all of it. You clearly don't have much to spare." Emily thought about it honestly, the way she thought about everything. "Because somebody did it for my mom once when we had nothing. A stranger paid for our groceries when her card got declined, and she was standing there in front of the whole line, crying. She never learned his name. She used to say kindness doesn't need a reason. It just needs a chance." She shrugged. "I figure I'm someone's chance now." Nathaniel didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he stood, put a folded 20 under his coffee cup, which she always tried to refuse and he always left anyway, and said, "Good night, Emily." He walked out into the cold, and for the first time in 3 weeks, he didn't feel like a stranger to the world. He felt like a man who had finally found the one person worth coming home to. The story broke on a Tuesday morning, and by noon, Maple Hollow had lost its mind. Billionaire Nathaniel Cross spotted disguised as homeless man in Maple Hollow. Sources say he's been testing locals for weeks. The article, syndicated to every regional outlet by evening, laid it all out. Cross Industries planned to invest $200 million in a town revitalization project. The incognito scouting trip, the photo on the grainy, taken from across the street, of a vagrant being escorted off the bank steps, who local sources now confirmed was Nathaniel Cross himself. Emily read it standing behind the diner counter, hand over her mouth, coffee pot trembling slightly in her other hand. Nathaniel. Her Nathaniel. The frozen man with the torn coat. The one she'd fed 100 free dinners without ever once asking for his last name. He was worth $11 billion. Across town, Vanessa read the same article in the back office and went white, then red, then reached for her phone, already composing a text she'd delete 4 times before sending. "Hi, Mr. Cross. I don't know if you remember me, but I own Rosie's Diner with my cousin. We'd love to have you back anytime. On the house, of course." She hit send before she remembered she was the one who'd stepped over him on the sidewalk. The mayor's office issued a statement within the hour, calling the earlier misunderstanding at the bank deeply regrettable and inviting Mr. Cross to a town welcome dinner. The bank manager who'd called security suddenly couldn't be reached for comment. The pharmacy owner who'd let his employee mock a freezing man on his sidewalk started handing out free hand warmers to the press in the spirit of community. Everyone in Maple Hollow, it seemed, had always secretly been kind to strangers, except one person who had actually been kind and hadn't known there was anything to gain from it. Emily didn't call him. She didn't know how. She'd never had his number, only his name, and even that felt suddenly borrowed, like it belonged to someone else now. Instead, she went home that night to her small apartment above the hardware store, sat on the edge of her bed, and cried. Not because she felt betrayed, but because she was suddenly terrified. Terrified that the only genuine thing in weeks of loneliness had been, without her knowing it, a test, and that she might have already failed some invisible part of it, or worse, passed, and now everyone would say she'd only been kind because somewhere, deep down, she'd known who he was. She hadn't known. God, she hadn't known. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "It's Nathaniel. I should have told you sooner. Can I see you tonight? Same time, same counter if you'll still have me." Emily stared at the screen for a long time before she answered. "The door's always unlocked for you. That never depended on your name." He came at closing, in a coat that actually fit him now, and for the first time, Emily saw him the way the rest of the world did. Expensive, composed, unmistakably powerful. It should have felt like meeting a stranger. It didn't. His eyes were the same. His thank you was the same. That was the part that mattered. "I owe you the truth," he said, sitting at his stool like he always had. All of it. He told her everything. The incognito trip, the board's revitalization plan, the humiliations at the bank and the mayor's office, and the one diner in town where a woman with a hole in her shoe had fed him without ever once asking what he could do for her. "You were the only real thing I found here," he said. "Everyone else was auditioning the moment they thought I mattered. You never knew I mattered, and you still gave me everything you had." Emily wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't know what to do with any of this." "You don't have to do anything. I'm not here to repay you like a debt, Emily. I'm here because I don't want to eat dinner alone anymore, and you're the only person in this town I've ever wanted to sit across from." Before she could answer, the diner door swung open. Vanessa, in her best dress, practically glowing with opportunity. "Mr. Cross, I am so sorry about the confusion earlier. I had no idea it was you. We would love to be your restaurant partner for the revitalization project. We could expand, rebrand. I've already got a whole—" "Vanessa." Nathaniel's voice was even, but final. "You stepped over a freezing man on the sidewalk 3 weeks ago and called him trash to your friend. I remember. I remember everything from those weeks, actually. That's rather the point of doing them incognito." Vanessa's face crumpled from opportunity into panic. I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem." He turned back to Emily. "Kindness that only shows up once someone's watching isn't kindness. It's a performance. Emily's never once performed for me. Not when I was nobody, and not now." Vanessa left without another word, heels clicking too fast against the linoleum, chased out by her own reflection in the dark windows. Emily exhaled, shaky. "I don't want this to be about her getting punished. I don't want it to be about money, either." "Then what do you want it to be about?" She looked at him, really looked, past the coat and the name and the $11 billion, at the same tired, grateful eyes that had looked up at her from beside a dumpster on the coldest night of the year. "I want it to be about dinner," she said. "Same as always. No cameras, no headlines. Just you, me, and terrible diner coffee." Nathaniel laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks, and it sounded like relief. 6 months later, Rosie's Diner had a new sign out front. The same name, because Emily refused to change it. But a fresh coat of paint and a line out the door that hadn't been there since her mother was alive. The Cross Foundation's Maple Hollow Revitalization Project had rebuilt 3 streets, funded a shelter with Emily's name quietly attached to the founding grant, the Heart House, for anyone who needed a warm bed and no questions asked, and turned the old mill into a training center for jobs that hadn't existed in the town for 20 years. Vanessa did not get her restaurant partnership. She got, instead, a very public and very avoidable lesson. The foundation published its selection criteria for local business partners, and documented pattern of public unkindness sat right there in black and white, alongside her name in the initial reporting she could never quite escape. She sold her half of the diner to Emily within the year and left Maple Hollow for a city where nobody had read the article. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Vanessa's absence from the diner said everything her presence never had. As for Emily and Nathaniel, there was no fairy tale proposal at a gala, no red carpet romance for the tabloids to devour. Just Tuesday dinners at the same counter, long after the diner's real customers had gone home. 2 coffees going cold while they talked about everything and nothing. "People keep asking me why I chose you," Nathaniel said one night, turning his mug slowly between his hands. "Out of everyone in that town, out of everyone I've ever met, honestly." "What do you tell them?" "That I didn't choose you. You chose kindness before you ever knew it would be seen. I just happened to be the one it landed on." Emily smiled, wiping down the counter one more time before closing. Old habit, one she'd never let go of, even now that she could afford new shoes, a warm coat, a life that didn't require counting every dollar. "There's still soup in the back," she said, "in case anyone comes by tonight who needs it more than the trash can does." Nathaniel looked at her, the same way he had that first frozen night, like a man who'd stopped expecting kindness to be real, and had finally, quietly, found a reason to expect it again. "Some things," he said, "shouldn't ever change." She locked the door behind them both, and for the first time since her mother passed, the diner's lights stayed warm long after closing. Not for profit, not for headlines, but simply because somebody, somewhere, might still be cold. The end.